Good morning again. Thanks everybody for joining today's call. This is Don Lopes over at Nexenta. I'm here at corporate office with Thomas Cornelli, our Chief Product Officer, Mike Letchin, our Field CTO. We're excited to have this session. It's our first kickoff for the new year product update session that we run on a quarterly basis, and we're excited to get started. So with that, a few quick housekeeping items. Since we've got a really good turnout of partners for today's session, we've decided to keep the lines muted just to avoid background noise or disruption during the presentation. That being said, please, we want to make this interactive. This is for really you, our partners, and so please use the chat function. Thomas, myself, Mike will be all watching that. We'll jump in as we can where appropriate to make sure questions are answered, and so please use the chat function there. Other quick housekeeping: we will be recording and are recording this session. We'll have it up on the partner portal with the slides probably about 12 to 24 hours from this time. So please look forward to that. We'll send out an email follow-up notification at the appropriate time, but just as a reminder there. So with that, again, Thomas, Mike, welcome. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to catch you guys up on the current version of Nexenta Store, both related to Nexenta Store 4.0 and Store 5. We're going to briefly update and give you a little bit of a preview around Nexenta Edge 2.0. Currently, Thomas, the release is Nexenta Edge 1.1, right?
Correct.
And so we're going to give you a little bit of heads up what's coming later this quarter, towards the end of March. We'll do a little bit more vision and a little bit more around other things coming. Mike's gonna give you guys some great demos of our solutions towards the end of the presentation, and then we'll close with Q&A. So with that, in all these sessions, we like to just highlight and any of our partners that are new, remind them around the overall strategy, positioning, and portfolio of solutions, right? So Nexenta works, if you look at sort of the framework at the bottom, a wide range of great partners that we spend a lot of time within our certification team and business development teams, understanding roadmaps and really building strong partnerships so that as we deliver solutions with our partners, you've got components that are certified and able to take rich, powerful solutions out to your customers. From a Nexenta protocol standpoint, we really strive to have a wide range of protocols to support really your different workload and application needs and delivering support up through your platforms and applications. If you look at our Nexenta product portfolio, really the core are our two bottom pillar solutions there, right? Our Nexenta Store scale up unified file and block technology. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this slide getting into that and steal any of Thomas and Mike's thunder. Our Nexenta Edge is our scale out high performance file block and object, and we'll go more into that. And then, as I mentioned, the roadmap around 2.0 and highlight some of the components there. Our Connect feature set, that is really, again, connecting into third-party platforms, applications, and providing integrated support for your solutions. And then Nexenta Fusion, right? Our single pane of glass analytics for our Nexenta platforms, primarily focused today on Nexenta Store, and we'll talk more about the features in future sessions. One thing before I hand it over to Thomas, I just wanted to highlight a success story we had and in some of the announcements we made a few weeks back related to a deployment we did with Peak 10. I don't want to go deep into the details, but it's a great success story that I think across the world our partners can leverage when talking to service providers and other customers that are building their own data centers. A few highlights on this is it's a disaster recovery as a service in which Peak 10 is looking at that they're putting on all flash, and they have, as mentioned, I think at the top there, over 2.5 petabytes of all flash disaster recovery as a service solution that they're then offering out as a service to their customers. So a very interesting case study. we did with IDC, so it's a third-party case study that's available, nexenta.com/IDC Peak 10. You can go ahead and grab that right from our website. We've also got on our webinars portion of our website a 60-minute session where Peak 10 went and gave a little bit more color details around what they're doing around their business and some of the challenges we're able to solve with them. So I think a great rich tool for our partners and hopefully enabling you to continue to tell the story around success and like customers as you're sitting down with future prospects. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Thomas to get into the meat of our discussion. Thomas, thanks again for joining.
All right, thanks a lot, Don. This is great. By the way, Peak 10 happens to be a customer that's running both Nexenta Store 4 and 5 today in production. So, quick update on Nexenta Store 4.05. We actually had, on the product side, a very busy Q4 last year. We finished the year by releasing and going GA with our Nexenta Store 5.0.1 release, Nexenta Fusion 1.0 product, and we closed the year with our Nexenta Store 4.05 product. 4.05 is, as you now expect based on the version numbering, a maintenance update. It's a roll-up of all the fix packs and customer patches we had released before that. It went GA in December, and it also contains a few significant targeted enhancements. The big one really is around support for data at rest encryption. So now with 4.05, we actually have reference architectures defined around self-encrypting drives that allow you to go and deliver solutions that include complete data at rest encryption for all of your data sets, something you can actually configure on a pool-by-pool level. There's other housekeeping items around security updates, patches and fixes. We upgraded versions of OpenSSL. That was something that came up a few times, of Apache. We have new drivers added in 4.05 that allow us to now run on the newer Intel X710. NICs also allows us to support 40 gig interface, QLogic, FC 16 gig, and so on. Some work on the SAS drivers. Actually, one of the items is a replacement of the MR SAS driver using the LSI binary SAS driver versus the Lumos open source driver. And then obviously chassis management additions, as you'd expect. Big items to call out. Ericsson AGS 8000 support. This is something that we do very closely with our partner Ericsson. They've been very successful in telco environments. Dell 84-bay JBOD, AGST 4U60-bay JBOD, and so on. All of these are documented now in the 4.0 HCL. We also published an updated version of the HCL back in Q4. Another thing I'd call out in there was additions in our supermicro reference architectures of support for the Intel V4 CPUs. Something that some of you probably had already been doing that we just made official and formally supported. Last but not least, we've run into some challenges at some customers around chassis management of supermicro JBODs. What we've now added and called out is when you order those JBODs, you have to get this special Nexenta integration SKU from supermicro. The details of it are in the HCL. That SKU ensures that the JBOD is set with the right firmware, the right settings, so that it comes up properly and can be managed properly by Nexenta Store. So again, another thing to think about that we missed, I think, in the past, and is now explicitly called out in the HCL.
And as a heads up to our partners, I mean, that's something that is, as you're ordering your hardware from Supermicro is a SKU. We can get that information to you guys as part of this follow-up, but it's simple, just as part of the overall order as you're ordering the rest of your hardware.
And the SKU details and specifications are all in the HCL, so you get the entire numbers.
Thomas, one thing for some of the new partners, just as a reminder, the HCLs are on the partner portal, right, as one spot. But you can also go to Nexenta Store, on our Nexenta.com website, the Nexenta Store product page. Right there on the top right-hand section, you've got documentation for 4, documentation for 5, and it's a nice, easy spot for you to grab the HCLs.
Absolutely. And actually, that's a nice segue into the fact that as part of adding encryption support in 4.05, we have a new guide that's also on the website that goes over how to configure and what to pay attention to. One thing to call out is as we now support data at rest encryption configurations, we actually leverage third-party key management infrastructure, right? So the solution today was built and certified to run with a separate key manager. We certified right now with the Gemalto Key Secure solution. We are working with other partners to go and add, other solutions for key management. But today, a solution that does at-rest encryption would require to have a separate Gemalto key secure system to go and actually generate keys, backup keys, protect them, and make them available to Nexana Store as the system comes up. So lots of more details in the documentation. I think the key thing here is you've got something that's very much, enterprise grade in terms of the implementation, what it supports. It leverages hardware encryption, so there's no performance impact around this. There is really, in the end, it's as seamless as it could be from a services perspective, but it does rely on a third-party solution for key management. All right. So that was the quick highlight on 4.05. I think we're doing great on 4.0. The solution is this rolled out in December. We have a number of customers that already went to production. This has been going very smoothly. So this is, again, 4.0 is in this very much steady state in terms of the product functionality right now.
Yeah, Thomas, I want to jump in one thing real quick, and maybe it's obvious for some of our existing, long-standing partners, but let me make sure maybe some newer partners. As of today, we're selling, right, both, and you have the opportunity to sell both Nexenta Store 4, Nexenta Store 5, right? And you mentioned Peak 10 running both solutions, right? So again, it's really based on existing customers and looking to continue to leverage 4, right? Where we've got a nice strong solution, and you've highlighted some of the features and enhancements there. Newer customers, if they are looking to move to Nexenta 5, obviously you're going to go into the features. Mike's going to do a demo, those type of things, but it's really what's right for the customer, what's right for their go forward, and that's really the strategy in which we have available for our partners today.
Yep, you're absolutely correct. And we actually touch on that a bit. We have a slide covering positioning once we've gone through the 5.0 presentation. So hopefully that makes sense. I think 4.0 is a known and trusted product right now. 5.0 was a major release for us. We haven't done major releases in a while. It was a long-running project. We spent about a year doing what we call community preview to get people access to what was to become 5.0 and make sure that we actually were hitting the right point with this product. The big change in 5.0 was a complete rewrite of the management framework in Nexana Store, a replacement of what is in Nexana Store 4 NMS, the management server NMC, the command line interface, and NMV, the web GUI, by what we now call in Nexana Store 5 NMF, which is Nexana Management Framework. The key thing here is basically you end up having a closed appliance exposing a set of self-documenting REST API on which everything else is built. Our CLI is built on those REST APIs. You get access yourself to the REST API, and we've got customers already doing automation using those APIs. Our management UI is also based on the API. Our VMware integration is based on that, so is our OpenStack integration and Docker integration. So those APIs end up being the foundation for everything. The key goal was to make Nexana Store 5 simpler than anything else we've released to date, and really get to a point where you're not trading off anything compared to a hardware appliance when you look at using SDS solutions based on Nexana Store. From a feature set perspective, I would argue that the product is actually just evolution on the version 4 product. It actually makes sense given that under the covers, at the kernel level, Nexana Store 5 is very much building on all the work we've done the past few years on Nexana Store 4. It is the same core platform, the same core OpenZFS. There's enhancements, but you don't have any major replacement in that product. So you're building on that strong foundation and just replacing the management framework, and in many ways upgrading the management interface. Things that I would still call out is obviously support for faster Ethernet, right? We now have support for the 710 driver in 5.0, just like you had in 4.05. So you actually support 40 gig. We're supporting 16 gig fiber channel, obviously. No major changes in terms of the core ZFS and NFS services. We did make some work around deduplication in 5.0. So for smaller configurations, you can now turn on deduplication and get benefits from it. Duplication will turn off automatically if you start running out of space in DRAM for your dedupe table, right? So you actually get dedupe benefits for your initial set of data, and then you just turn off if you were to go and speed out of memory. And then the other place where we did a lot of work, and this is a major new component in the product, is replication. Nexana Store 5 replaces the framework of AutoSnap and AutoSync that you have in 4 with a centralized solution that delivers what we call data protection and delivers high-performance replication solution for remote replication. So now you have one engine that takes care of your local snapshots, your local schedule snapshots, and your remote either schedule snapshots, and also a new function that allows you to do continuous async replication between appliances. Okay, so there's just a lot of work that's been done around replication to make it more resilient, easier to use, and allows you to go and hit ever tighter RPO. Other enhancements is work around QoS support, and we'll talk about that in a second. VMware integration, we have a new vCenter plugin. We have now vVol support. Work on OpenStack, obviously, we've been doing this for some time now, but now continuing to go and support 5.0 in OpenStack mainline with both Cinder and Manila drivers. Like I said, the big change in 5.0 was focusing on simplicity, being simpler to deploy, configure, and run over time and operate. The foundation of this is what you see in the background here, which is basically a clean set of REST API, giving you a single self-documenting REST API, very easy to go and consume and get comfortable with. We're seeing this for partners doing this, both technology partners and reseller partners and customers. This is actually something that we leverage for ourselves, right? We have different teams working on all the different points of integration between the CLI, Fusion, vCenter plugin, and those teams basically leverage the same documentation that we're now exposing to our end users. Something that we call out, and that we've been doing for a while now, is the fact that we got a very broad set of all-flash configurations. I mean, Peak 10 is a great example of a customer that went all in on Extended Store all-flash, deploying now basically up to 2.5 petabytes of all-flash. I mean, that's a huge amount of capacity when you think about it. And they've been doing this with a lot of success in terms of performance and reliability for their VMware backend environments. We've added support for SMB3 with ODX for Hyper-V. We also basically worked very hard on our VMware integration. We actually just completed certifications of VMware, so those is all behind us now and published on the VMware cert site. VAI for block services, very much upgraded vCenter plugin, and Mike will go through a nice demo of that, and then vVol 2.0 support of the solution. And then last but not least, as I mentioned, replication, just simple configuration. We've also added support for effectively being able to go and pause, resume replication of a snapshot. So something that was very much important when you have lots of data that you're transferring. In a previous version of the product in 4.0, if you had a 10 terabyte data set that you're replicating and you had done 8 terabyte transferred and you got a network interruption, you'd have to start over. In 5, the system would just pick up where it left off, right? And so you basically just go and transfer the remaining 2 terabytes and have that 10 terabyte data set transferred fairly quickly. And then last but not least is this new support for this continuous async replication option, and I'll talk about that in a second. Now, different deployment scenarios are now supported with 5.0. One thing to call out, to get a graphical UI, to get an extent of Fusion, you have to have a separate server deployed. Fusion today is delivered as an OVA, so effectively if you have a virtual machine deployed that will run your UI, that gives you now single pane of glass management for all of your Extended Store appliances, whether they are clustered or single node. Another thing I'll call out is, in Fusion, managing a cluster is basically managing a single system, right? So all of your pools, your file systems, your volumes, your services will show up from that single appliance that happens to be a 2-node appliance. So again, you get this single view of your configuration. We also have, obviously, for VMware environment, an upgraded vCenter plugin, right? So you're running the Extended Store on the back end, exporting either Fiber Channel, iSCSI, or NFS data stores to vSphere, and then you can do all of your management, literally all management, through that plugin, right? So this is both adding management of the Extended Store storage services, but also has integration into the workflows into vCenter to go and automate provisioning of your data stores. And then finally, and it's something that we've been talking about and we're seeing a lot more customers start using, is this VSA model, right? So once you're running VMware, it doesn't matter how you have your data stores. Those could be provided by an Extended Store. They could be provided by third-party storage. They could be provided by vSAN, Nutanix, and we have people doing all of these configurations, giving Extended Store VMs now on top of the storage, and again using the Extended plugin to go do multi-tenant management of those VSAs, right? So a great solution, very cost-effective to go and get very advanced, powerful file services, shared file services across any VMware infrastructure. I mentioned HPR. the key things here is really completely reworked management interface. We have as of 5.02, which was released earlier this year, a whole set of documentation around replication that makes it very easy now to go through what we support, how it's configured, different models. What you'll find is a lot of the things that you could do in 4 are now very formally supported in 5 with a clear structure and a clear framework. Things that I will call out, I mentioned auto-resume, which is important. We also support different levels now of transaction consistency, both for file systems, but also for volumes, right? So we have this notion of a volume group, in instance of file that allows you to go and replicate between volume groups, giving consistency across all the learns that are within the same volume group, right? So quite important when you have applications that care about, consistency across multiple learns. And last but not least, is being able to go and basically dial the RPO very tight. So by default, an enterprise edition customer gets support to go and have RPO down to 15 minutes, 1.5. Okay, so that's what you get by default when you have enterprise edition. You can go lower than that if you acquire the extra option that is called continuous replication. That option allows you now to go and dial RPO down to minutes, and so be able to go to scheduled replication down to every minute if you want to, and also unlocks support for continuous async replication. In continuous async replication, what we do is every transaction group going to the FS gets shipped over to the remote appliance. So you get as close to 0 RPO as you could possibly get without affecting performance on your primary site. Okay? So things to remember, your default enterprise edition license gives you scheduled replication as tight as every 15 minutes, and anything tighter than that requires this extra option that is on the price list. Okay?
And Thomas, as you kind of show here on the slide, there's a nice document, again, under the documents section of Nexenta Store 5.0, and then we can go and read up further on. It's a great another asset to share with your customers if this is a scenario for the workload in which they need something they want to look
Absolutely. In terms of reference architectures, 5 is building on what we had done for 4. We've done some work in terms of how we present those arrays. So these are just examples. There's more than this, but this is our Dell reference architectures, Lenovo reference architectures supporting the 2U 12-bay, 2U 24-bay, and now 5U 84-bay enclosure. Supermicro, obviously, a very broad portfolio of solutions, right? We have solutions with Cisco that are not documented here, but are in the HCL. Solutions with AMAX, a new partner of ours, that are all appliance-based solutions. We talked about the framework for Nexenta Store. This is all based on this self-documenting REST API. Again, I encourage you to go and have a look and try them out. There's just a lot of things you can do from there in terms of driving automation. These are just quick screenshots of Fusion. I have them in a deck, but what we'll do is just click through fairly quickly so that you can go straight to the demo that Mike will give you. You'll get a lot more details there. But again, one pane of glass now to go through your configuration and provisioning of your appliances. This is showing you at the top a cluster, HA node. You get your 2 heads effectively, and underneath 3 single node appliances. As you drill down, you get to measure your hardware, your components, your pool, your file systems, and so forth. Another thing that's new in 5 and Fusion is analytics, right? So Fusion actually captures a lot of statistics off of Nexenta Store 5. We've done a lot of work in 5.0 to instrument the kernel and all the services in a way that doesn't affect performance. And all of that data goes into that Fusion server and allows you to go back in time and a review of the performance data on either your pools, your block LANs, or your file shares. As I mentioned, a lot of work done around VMware integration. So new vCenter plugin, very nice vCenter plugin. Actually, I think VMware itself is actually leveraging this right now on their vCenter page to go and highlight what plugins can go do and deliver. It's kind of interesting to go see, and it's great validation of what we've done here. And as I mentioned, VI support for block and vVol support. vVol today is supported on NFS protocol endpoints. Okay. And then we're maintaining the work we've done on OpenStack. You can find all of our drivers. Right now, our drivers are actually in mainline, but you get updates and new versions from Nexenta.github.io. If you go there, you can get all the details. We're also adding support for volume plugins for Docker over NFS today, and working right now on adding support for volume plugins for Kubernetes. So again, make sure that we stay up to date on ecosystem integration, both on our core solutions and what we see as emerging ecosystems like Docker and Kubernetes. Now with that, I want to go and leave more time to Mike to go through the demo. So let me just pass the hand here.
Folks, just a quick reminder, any questions that you have, please just leverage the chat function. We're happy to incorporate those in the discussion, or again, we can cover them at the end.
So as we get into a demo of it, one of the things that I want to make sure that people recognize from the start is the ability to utilize this API that Thomas mentioned. As he said, both the vCenter plugin as well as the Fusion interface and our CLI are all based off of this API. With that, it's a really simple API for people to be able to manage while still being really robust and a full REST API on it. The self-documenting part is what makes it, I think, stand out a bit for your customers as well. So what I'm looking at here is directly on one of the appliances, looking at that self-documenting API, where I can go in and see different things, whether I want to just see the inventory and look at what do I have for CPUs in that system. It's as simple as scrolling down to it and telling it to try it out and see what it is. The first thing you'll notice when you do that, this is still secure in that sense though. You've got to be able to log into the system. It's not just opening it wide up. You have to be able to log in and see before you start being able to push or get anything from it. So while it gives you that capability to get to it remotely, it still keeps it nice and secure. So now when I try this again, I'm able to see what my CPUs are and everything in the system I'm running. This is anything I'm looking at on any of the interfaces I'd be able to get from here. So if you want to be able to do licensing set changes, if you want to be able to add more volumes, you want to script against it for other monitoring tools, that's where this really comes in, becomes really handy for you and your customers. So from there, what we've built off of that is that Nexenta Fusion interface is the first place we'll go on it. And now a lot of the feature set that I'm going to show you in Fusion is very similar to the interface that you'll see when we go over to the vCenter plugin, and I'll show you both parts of that as we go. But on Nexenta Fusion, the first thing you'll notice, it's a real differentiator from where we were on Nexenta Store 4, is the ability to have multi-array management and single cluster control. So your HA cluster looks like a single appliance. So we've got 4 different appliances I'm running here. 2 of these are running as HA clusters, and then 2 of them is just single nodes on it. We're going to go ahead and do the management, the demo through on one of my HA clusters here. It gives you the information on basic health and usage on this main screen, but then when you go into an appliance, the first thing you're going to see is a dashboard of what's going on in your system, really making use of that new API and the extra analytics we can get. But I'm going to hold on this dashboard a bit and come back to it. So we'll walk through kind of what a day in the life really looks like for the end users today when they're doing different things on the system. So we'll start with creating a pool. Now, in the past, if there was a large set of drives, if we had a lot of different drives, we've had to have different ways to manage that. Now, we can make it really simple to go in, give the pool a name, tell it that I want it to be HA, and start creating that pool. And the first thing we're going to do is tell it how we want those VDEVs created. So as we're used to with Nexenta Store, as it's been in history, being able to use either mirror drives or different RAID Z capabilities for multi-parity. But what I'm going to do here is now graphically look at what my drives are. So I can see right away from here if I've got different drive types, what they are, and I'm going to say I want to use this drive 1 here and drive 1 in a different JBOD. Now why that's important is the next VDEV as I create it, it's going to know to try to go and use the next drive as we go. So it uses the next 2 and the next 2 of that type drive as they're available. As I'm doing this, I continually grow what my data size will be and get a quick glimpse of what size the pool will look like. And then moving on, if I'm not going to just have capacity on here, I want to be able to add cache drives in for L2 ARC. And I know I want to use things like an SSD that's specifically ready for that. I can see this SSD happens to be a Seagate. I've got one over here that it was a smart SSD. I can take my choice of what I want on that and add those cache drives in. From there, I can do the same thing if I'm going to do add in slog drives for better write performance. Same thing if I'm going into adding spares. So I can add in a spare here and take one of these other drives and tell it to spare. From there, I'll go ahead and tell it which one of those head nodes to start it on and create the pool. Now, what I'm doing in the background is what we've done historically. I'm creating those VDEVs and then combining them in to give you your first pool of storage we're looking at. But because we want this under HA control, the first thing I'm going to have to do is create a new HA service. So I'll just create demo HA here. Give it a VIP. We'll just call it demo for the VIP here. Give it the IP address and the subnet. And then tell it on which of those head nodes, which interface am I going to use. Once I create that service, I'm now creating a service that allows me to fail over either a single pool or multiple pools between the head nodes for maintenance and things like that. So you can fail over a pool one at a time or as you need to. So right away it's going in, creating this pool and setting up that service. So it just takes a minute. I've got to obviously create a VIP, go create a pool, get everything going. Notice I have one here already, this do not destroy, is already running on a pool, and that's sitting on node 1 already. So now that this is created, it's got this new demo created, already has it running on .54, so you can see down on the mouse over, and it's running on node 1 already. If I need to put that onto node 1, I can just move the pool over. But because we want to be able to get into, now what do I do with the pool and that day in and day out, first thing we'll do is go create a file system off of it. So I've got a few different file systems already created here, but that new demo pool is sitting there. So I'll add a new file system in. Again, just keep it simple. We'll call it demo FS. I can hit the basic settings on here. If you need to do more advanced settings, they're optional, but these are the things that are standard day in and day out that most of the users will need to make it nice and simple. Once that's created, it's great that I have a file system, but I can't do anything with it yet. So the first thing we'll do is go in and share it. First, we'll share it via SMB. Nice and easy, similar to what you're used to. A checkbox, save it, and it's now available over SMB. Because it's unified, I can still do the same thing if I want to share it via NFS as well. Now giving me a few more options that auto set up things like the ACLs for if you want it for virtualization. Maybe it just wants to be an open share. Or if you want to do that ACL settings yourself, you can do that as well. We'll set this one for virtualization and have it go, and it's ready as an NFS share now. Now the next thing that I probably want to look at if I've got users throwing data on it is how am I going to protect it? And again, to keep that in one spot, I'm going to go ahead and use that cog. And notice everything I've done for management uses this cog over here on the side. Single space to go manage whether you're editing the shares, you want to see the ACL, but also now where I want to go in and do things like snapshots and replication. So I don't have anything on here because it's a brand new one, but I can take my first just ad hoc snapshot and take that one that's sitting there on the first time. But nobody wants to sit here and have to, every time they're worried about a snapshot, go in and do it every time by themselves. So we have the scheduled protection services. Now when I'm creating a service, I'll call this hourly snap on it. I have the choice here to either do snaps or replication. And this is something that allows you to have a single management setup, a single scheduler, and a single interface to know whether you're just doing local snapshots or if I want to send things over to a secondary system for that replication. Real easy replication that needs to be there for that secondary site for DR. At this point, I did hourly, but I have the choice how often I want it to happen, how quickly, do I want it every hour, and I'll do it at the top of the hour. For this, because I'm doing this as just a retention for local, I'll tell it to keep 6 copies, so I've got the last 6 hours. If I was doing this for replication, I'd also have the option here on how many copies I wanted to keep on the remote site as well. So if I wanted to just keep 6 hours locally to make it easy, but on that remote site, that's really for DR, so keep an extra the last 48 hours if I really need to get to it. I add the schedule, and you can add multiple schedules here if you want to. And I create this new hourly snap protection service. So now this is going to go, and every hour at the top of the hour, take a nice snapshot of the file system. Now, Thomas mentioned continuous replication. That's also here and allows you to give that real quick near sync, that async yet near async replication process there if you're going between two systems. So if I jump back over to the file systems, I've now got that demo file system created, presented NFS, presented SMB, and it's protected using that snapshot. Now, it's real similar if you're doing things with volumes. So one of the big differences now, though, is this ability to do volume groups. So with this, I'm going to create a demo volume group, and underneath this have multiple different volumes that give us some consistency. So if you've got multiple different systems that you want to have managed and snapshotted at the same time or anything like that, you can have them all under a single volume group. So I'll create a demo volume, make it 100 terabytes, and then provision that. Now, similar to when I was doing the file systems, I've created this volume, but it's not doing anything yet. So what I want to do is map that, and now I can go in and map it via iSCSI, add the mapping. I've got a host group created, and then the standard target group, give it a LUN, and go ahead and save it. And now that'll go out and give me iSCSI presentation on that. Now, any of that data protection that I talked about for the snaps are going to be a quick overview here as well. So if you want to go specifically look at just my scheduled snapshots, I can look at those. Or if it's a replication and see that as you grow this into a bigger environment. Now, this was all within Fusion if you want to manage it here. The next step on this is what that day in and day out of analytics will look like. And I mentioned the dashboard earlier because it's the first place that you'll see when you come into the system. Get a quick glimpse of your health, where you're at on utilization, reduction, all the performance, as well as kind of what are those top shares, what's going on that system today. With that, you don't need to be limited, though, to just that share. So I can go in and say, I'm going to create a new canvas to see what's going on. And actually, I've got another system over here. It's got some good load on it. So I'll go over and look at this NFS1, which was just another canvas that was created on this HA cluster to be able to see really what's going on. Now, this is completely configurable. If I want to make these bigger, smaller, I can drag and make them smaller however I want. But I can also, though, add more widgets to this. It gives you a lot of different options on which widgets you want to add, whether they're specific for that appliance or whether you want to go into the dashboard and add more there. From each one of these widgets, I've also got this set at real time or as well as just over an extended period of time. So here's my first line is all what's going on right now on those shares. The second, I've got set right now at 6 hours. I can jump back and change them all, see what's going on over the last day. And I don't need to see I can see multiple different shares if I wanted, as well as whether it's just read, write, latency, all the way through on what I want to look at on these shares. So you have a whole new way to look at what the analytics are getting on the system, a lot more robust, a lot more detailed. For instance, here we have a little bit of spike here. I can drill into that spike a little bit deeper to see, oh, where was it? What did I really hit? How much data was I pushing? Now, because of the API, we did a very similar setup over on the vCenter plugin. So right now, I'm in our plugin, just into the vCenter web client, looking at that cluster 50 we're working on. Now, from here, if I create a new file system, I'll call this one vCenter FS. It automatically looks at what the pools are, and I tell it how I want to create it, and it'll go and create a new share on that already right away for NFS. Now, once those pools are created, all that management can now be done within vCenter. So if I click on one of these as it's creating the file system, I can see user configuration. I can, again, do snapshots if I wanted, and I can look at those same protection services. So very similar on the style. You notice this comes up, same look and feel, scheduled replication, scheduled snapshots, and create the schedule in the same basis I was doing from Nexenta Fusion. Now, if you don't always want to look at it directly from our console, so if I go in and say, go to home on my vCenter, simply sits there, but most users are coming in and they're working in things like hosting clusters on a daily basis. So within that, as I expand out my cluster, I can actually pick I'll pick one of my hosts here, and you'll notice there's a new piece down here with all of the Nexenta Store plugin actions. And I can create the data store directly from here. When I'm doing this, I can create an NFS data store. If we also have the vVol capabilities built into this as well. What I'm going to do is demo of vCenter. Right now, what it's doing is looking at each of the appliances that are registered and saying, oh, what pools are available? I'm going to pick that demo pool we created. I'll say next. Tell it where I want to put it on that mount point. And as I complete this, now it's going to not only go create the file system, it's going to add it to the host, and we'll be able to see it back on my cluster over here. Because it's using that API, everything's popping up all similar across the board. So there it is, demo vCenter that we created. It's already shared via NFS, and it's available over on the vCenter plugin. This gives you a whole different way to look at what you're managing, how you're looking at it. One of the things that comes up, the last thing is probably, how do I look at my hardware? How do I make sure everything is good? Now, you saw a little bit when I looked at the hardware, building out the pools, but now I can also go to the components view, look at each of the hosts, see if everything is working well, and get all the information on it. From there, I can even do things like blink drives if I need to by showing indicators. So overall, it's just a much cleaner, easier management system for you to use with Nexenta Store 5 over 4. So on that, Thomas, I'll hand it back to you to wrap us up here, I think.
All right, thank you, Mike. This was just make sure we're projecting.
You gotta click the show my screen.
Yeah, it should be showing.
Here we go. Yep. You're up.
And we're good. Perfect. Thank you, Mike.
Of course.
So I think, this was a lot of things going very fast. I think what you were able to go see is Mike using Fusion to actually create a brand new pool on an HA cluster, create file systems, create LUNs, export them, go through analytics and the dashboards, and then go over quickly to the vCenter plugin. What we're getting is, 5.0 right now is going through a very smooth rollout. We're currently on 5.02 and Fusion 101, and we're getting very positive feedback about it from our partners and customers already using this in production. One thing to call out, it's, as Don mentioned earlier, we've got both 4.0 and 5.0 right now, and both of them will be supported, obviously. Obviously, more development is going into new features on 5, but we're still actively supporting 4. How do you go and position 4 and 5? Right. So today, at the moment, we do not support upgrading from 4 to 5. This is something that we'll add as part of our 5.1 version, which we'll go and release in the second half of 2017. That's something that's currently being worked on. So for now, you have the 4.0 product, which has features which are only available on 4.0. Things like encryption, things like Metro HA, right? So customers requiring those functionality obviously should go to 4.05. Similarly, existing customers that you have that have a large install base on 4 may want to go and stay to 4 on new configurations, just because they may prefer to go and get consistency of operations on the 4.0 portfolio. And so for those customers, we recommend sticking to 4. At the same time, we also see customers that have been existing customers on 4, like Peak 10, that want to get to the new API, want to get to the new interfaces, and may want to go and deploy 5. So you get customers actually will want to go and get options and deploy 5.0 for those new clusters, right? So the short version here is Most customers that are new customers should be looking to 5, obviously, and that's what we'd expect to see happen. Existing customers that are on 4 may stick to 4, and obviously customers that have specific requirements on features are currently not supported yet on 5.0, like Metro HA or like data trust encryption, should go to 4.0 to go and get this functionality.
Thomas, question, I'll put you on the spot a little bit. If a partner is asked what is for the end-of-life strategy on 4.0, what's the answer that they should be giving, and what's sort of our response?
No, that's a great question. We don't go and aggressively end-of-life products. As you probably know, we still support version 3. We still support version 3.16 on our product. So effectively, customers on 4.0 are going to get support for a number of years, right? So this should not be a concern.
Okay, so if you're on current support for another couple of years, we're maintaining support, and you're continuing to, as you can see,
yep,
add features. Okay.
The question that will come up, I'm sure, is when you look at 5.0 and compare this to 4, you have a lot of functionality here, right? You get Nexternal Store 5, you get Fusion, you get external plugin. All of this, what are the impact and changes in pricing licensing? So what I'll start with is first, the licensing framework from a technical perspective in 5 is different than 4. Okay, it is in many ways simpler, right? It's something that we revamped. To go and basically license a system in 5, you get a token. That token applies to your cluster, and if you're doing licensing online, all of this is now done online activation, right? So you get your token and you activate your cluster online, and the system will basically turn on your cluster and make sure that Nexenta licensing servers have all the information that's required, but in the end, you can quickly get up and running with your solution. One thing I call is Nexenta Fusion is available and effectively available to anybody who's got Nexenta Store 5 Enterprise Edition license. Okay, so there is no extra charge, there's no extra licensing complexity around getting Fusion up and running when you have Nexenta Store 5 license up and running. From a pricing perspective, effectively no change, right? So 5 is very much like 4. It's priced on raw capacity. It's a perpetual license. So you get, from a licensing perspective, there's no more complexity between 4 and 5. In many ways, actually getting simpler. One thing I mentioned earlier is replication is included as part of your basic Enterprise Edition license that allows you to go and replicate every 15 minutes. If you want to go and get tighter than that, or if you want to go and get continuous replication, we do have a new add-on option. This is a licensed option that will unlock this functionality. So overall, pretty straightforward.
Thomas, question came in regarding, 4 and 5 and HCL a little bit, right? Mm-hmm. And again, you mentioned earlier, 5.1 is when we'll have the seamless upgrade, right? The question though is, can a Nexenta Store 4 move to 5 even if it's not on the 5 HCL? Sort of what's the best practice there?
So you shouldn't, right? Obviously. And this is the same. We went through the same questions when we went from 3 to 4, right? Which is once we support rolling upgrade, you should check ahead of time that your system is already supported on the 4.0 HCL, in this case, in the 5.0 HCL, so that you can get smooth support. The issue isn't so much around, will it work? From a functional perspective, it would work. The question always comes up in terms of chassis management. As you look at Fusion, you look at the amount of integration we've done in Fusion around your hardware, there's a bit of work that you have to go do here. And so in the end, you're going to get a better experience once your hardware is formally on the 5.0 HCL and formally supported as part of the Fusion support of 5.0.
Yeah, and again, I think we expect and have seen for the most part, customers are going to be running existing 4.0. For the most part, they'll maintain running on 4.0, right? There may be some use case and scenarios that they'll want to upgrade, but most part, if they're running, it's working well, the experience, the knowledge, and everything is there, right? We see maybe then in future deployments they'll move to 5 is sort of what we expect as more the norm. Going back to the question again, if those things do come up, engage with your sales team in those scenarios. We can discuss, review, and see how it makes sense around certification.
Absolutely. And again, I wouldn't want to go and get stuck on hypotheticals right now. 4 and 5, 5.0 you cannot upgrade from 4 to 5, right? So a 5.0 system is a brand new system. As we work on supporting upgrades to 5.1, right, we will obviously expand our support matrix for 5.1, and hopefully by then, you won't have to go and basically be worried about something that was running on 4.0 that won't be supported on 5.1. And this is all a question of time, but by and large, what I would expect is by the time we get to 5.1, most configurations are currently running on 4 will get supported and certified on the 5.1 HCL. And so that question will actually not be a major concern. One thing we did want to go and point out, there's a lot of work around 5 around simplifying and having a overall better user experience. That goes and extends to documentation. The documentation is obviously available on nextenda.com. One document that is not on the public portal, but is available on the partner portal, is the Nextenda Store 5 product guide. That's more of a somewhat technical marketing document. It's a nice document that gives you a quick overview of what 5.0 is, what you get with 5.0 in terms of function, and what in the end 5.0 is as a product in terms of fusion relationship, vSANO plugin, feature set, and so forth. So it's a good document to go and provide to prospect. It's a good document for new customers to get acquainted with what 5.0 delivers in terms of functionality. Okay, that document is not on nextenda.com. It is, however, available on the partner portal. So what's next, right? So we talked about 4.05, we talked about 5.0 and the current version of 5.02. What we give you here is a couple of things on what we're working on right now around next version of Nextenda Store 5. And the next thing, obviously for us, would be a next maintenance update, version 5.03, which will basically go with Nextenda Fusion 1.02. This is currently targeted for middle Q2 of 2017. Key things that I will call out, and there's quite a few things in there around 5.03. You get your usual maintenance update work, which is basically rolling up fixes and enhancements that we see from customer and customer patches. Supporting enhancements, obviously. We talked about all the work we're doing around VMware integration. We're actually adding support for QoS, for NFS data stores for VMware, right? So this is one of those key asks we get mainly for our all-flash configuration. When basically all-flash delivers a lot of performance, and partners and customers and service providers typically want to go and be able to go and dial back, the performance they deliver for some NFS data stores, so that you get that support now in 5.03 and in Fusion 1.02. Other work that we're doing around the core is around ZFS resilver. As we get larger disks and larger drives that we support, when we go and get faster resilver performance, a lot of that will be delivered with 5.03. This is something that we actually showcased at the OpenZFS Summit back last year in terms of work we're doing in OpenZFS and driving through OpenZFS. And Nextenda has been at the forefront of this enhancement. We have it in 5.03, and we basically committed back to OpenZFS later in 2017, but 5.03 will be the first version that will go and provide those benefits. We actually expect to see performance improvements on large drives and resilver, that will be multiple X, right? We've seen enhancements between 3X to 5X, depending on the configuration. So very significant performance improvement here to resilver large drive configurations. Another enhancement is something that we call smart sparing, which actually is part of 5, which is having ZFS automatically activate the spare that matches the characteristics of the drive or the device that just failed, whether it's a SSD versus a HDD versus a HDD of a given size. ZFS will go and simply pick up a spare that matches those characteristics, so that's what you'd expect. But in 5.03, we're enhancing this now to go and actually take care of location of the spare, so favor spares are in the same enclosure as the device that failed, and also enhancing now to what we call auto replace, allowing a user to simply physically replace drives and have ZFS pick up on the fact that a new drive has now been replaced and trigger the failover, failback, and receiver back from a spare on that replaced drive. Okay, so more details on that, obviously in that documentation on 5.03. But again, the whole idea here is to have something that's kind of simpler and just more intuitive to use and reacts properly to just replacing devices in a cluster. From a replication perspective, one of the changes that's coming into 5.03 is what we call the recovery scenarios that will by default do dry run. So if you go and run a recovery operation on a HPR service by default will tell you and just list out, hey, to recover the service, we're going to go and take care of all these functions. We found that there's a mismatch in snapshots. We may have to go and delete some snapshots, but those will get listed first. And then as a user, you get to go and say, yes, please proceed. Right? As opposed to currently in 502 is a recover just goes and recover a service and takes whatever actions are required to go and recover that service. So, some tweaks and enhancements here, both on XNS Store and obviously the corresponding enhancements in Fusion. Fusion also has enhancements around security, around new performance widgets to go and allow you to go and do more analytics on your solutions. One thing we call out, we're also, now that we have 5 in Fusion, we are working with our hardware partners to go and do more integration in terms of the overall solutions, moving on from reference architectures to what we're starting to go and refer to as, appliances, partner-led appliances. One example of these, we're doing this currently with Lenovo to a great extent. We're also enhancing this with Supermicro. We're working on lower-end solutions that allow you to go and basically target single chassis solutions with HA, right? Leveraging the Supermicro SVB solutions. So these will be Supermicro appliances delivered through Supermicro, leveraging this XNS 5 preloaded manufacturing that will give you now this nice entry point in the market, both on the all-flash front with a 2U, 2-node HA solution that can expand now to another couple of enclosures, and also on the hybrid and all-disk configurations with a 4U 24-bay SVB solution running this XNS 5 and give you a nice hybrid configurations, both mirrors and performance, RAID, and then expanding to a couple of JBODs. All right, so with that, what I'd like to do is open it up for a few questions in case we got something on the chat.
Yeah, Thomas, again, I know we're about 60 seconds in, right, from the top of the hour, so we got a lot of great content in here. A lot of good questions come in, so I apologize. We're not gonna jump into all of them just to respect your guys' time. I'm gonna grab maybe one or two, and have a couple of closing remarks, if that's okay. One though, I think it comes up quite a bit around NVMe, right? So when will you support NVMe SSDs and dual port NVMe SSDs?
So that's a great question. And this is mainly a question on hardware right now. We are looking at solutions from a chassis perspective, a control perspective, that can allow us to go and define those reference architectures. So this is much more of a finding the right hardware configurations to go and basically add to our HCL. As we mentioned, 5.0 supports NVMe drivers. We've done quite a bit of testing of those. It's just coming up with the right configuration. So, a lot of these things end up being partner driven. Yeah. If you have a partner, and if somebody's on the call here who has a specific platform they would want us to support, let us know. And this is something that we basically focus on with our partners in terms of adding this to our HCL for 5.
Great. Folks, again, thank you for all the great questions. I'm going to actually hold the questions, and what we'll do is we'll send direct responses to each of you with the answer to the question. I think we just have too many to kind of get through here, and we're already over the top of the hour. A few things, again, as we close. First, I want to thank everybody for attending and appreciate your time here today. I know we went through the demo very fast, and a lot of the discussion and points Thomas touched on. If you want more detailed demos, have more deeper questions, please engage your sales team, your sales engineers at Nexenta. If you're not sure off the top of the head, who that individual is, or you're looking to work closer with that team, the best way to get a hold of us is just sales@nexenta.com. Another great recommendation is, we do have on nexenta.com our free trials, right, for our enterprise solutions, right? So you can go and look at Nexenta 4, 5, Fusion, etc. Right there on our website. Go and request a demo and start playing with the technology. It's a great way to become much more familiar and learn firsthand, and then be able to discuss with us your questions and present this back to your customers when appropriate. So with that, Thomas, Mike, any final closing remarks? Any points you want to make sure our partners are caught up on?
Not really. I mean, again, I want to thank Mike for the great demo. And it's always nice when you see everything kind of go nicely. By the way, this was all a live demo. This was not pre-recorded, so this is all being done on our lab, on hardware. So it's always great when things go smoothly. And last but not least, I think the key thing, and hopefully everybody kind of sees this, right, is the evolution of the product, right? With 4, we just built up on performance, scalability, reliability. We have a strong platform. With 5, we're taking this to the next level, building on all this work in terms of core functionality and now adding a very nice, polished user interface to make it a lot easier now for customers to go deploy and just leverage, the benefits of SDS more broadly to more customers, more end users, but also more workloads in their environment. So hopefully we can drive this, deeper into the market together and take advantage of what 5 now gives you to work with in terms of pitching and presenting and selling. Great, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that. Adding that the new simplicity and the just ability to really show it and drive what SDS can be for everyone in the field, I think is key and that's what they need to be able to focus on. So thank everyone for joining us.
Perfect. Again, reminders, you'll get an email probably from us in the next 24 hours. In that, you'll have access to, back through the portal, our slides, the recording. And again, I apologize for not getting to all the questions. We'll reach out directly to each of you to work through those and answer anything else. Thank you again, everybody, for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.